right, guys, welcome to another CFN HQ Hangout, and to follow our order from the previous weeks, I'm always chatting it up with a bunch of buddies of mine, and today I was lucky enough to get on a friend of ours, Shawn Butler, and I'm gonna let him tell us a little bit about himself in a minute, but just how he ended up on this show. I reached out to him. I don't reach out to people blindly. I have some sort of connection to these people over the years. And my first experience with Shawn was, I believe, the way I remember it, and Shawn probably didn't remember me, but I remembered him because I competed at the sectionals at KOP. And that was my first exposure to Shawn as an athlete. And I was like looking at him like, wow. And then that year, I'm sure we're going to go over this. We ended up at regionals at a time where the regionals format was different in Ohio. And ever since then, I kind of knew who Shawn was. Shawn was at the local competitions I was at, and that whole landscape has changed. He was at some Olympic weightlifting meets. I knew he owned FiveStar. And then just recently, we had touch base again because me and my coaches, some of my coaches were actually interested in really finding out what separates these good gyms from mediocre gyms and these great coaches. And Shawn was one of the coaches that let us in, and we took a class, and we had an awesome experience there. He runs an excellent facility, CrossFit FiveStar. Is that considered Warminster?
Warrington.
Warrington, okay. Up in Warrington on 611. It's actually, fun fact, a long time ago, I had fascinations with Chinese buffets. And that Easton buffet over there was one of my favorites. Get a haircut. I'd be in that neck of the woods, and I'd make an effort to stop there. I don't do that anymore, but I did. But he happens to be located very close to the Easton buffet, which as soon as we're allowed back into the open, I haven't had Chinese food in a very long time. And have to go visit back there and do some work. Maybe I'll go work out at FiveStar first so I don't feel as bad about going there. But so we went there, had a really cool experience, and now Shawn agreed to come and chat with me for a little bit. Shawn, I just wanted to start up give us a little picture and spend as much time as you want, how you ended up, what your background was, how you ended up like finding CrossFit, because I know you were an athlete, which we could talk about. How did you end up finding CrossFit and bring us through? You could tell us, but is that your first facility and only facility, or you had one prior?
I was at another gym before that.
Cool. All right. Catch me up and give me a little background as far as how we got there, where you're at now, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So I'm a high school football player, college football player. I played at Bloomsburg. I went to Bloomsburg and graduated with a biology degree and an education degree. They had a sports degree, but I liked more of the science part of it. So I got my full-on biology degree. And that led me to getting out of school. I went into teaching. And while I was in teaching, I was at Neshaminy High School. I was a biology teacher there for 10 years. I was introduced to CrossFit via one of the phys ed teachers. So myself and another teacher who I was friends with, he was one of the baseball coaches, went to the gym one day afterwards, and they said, hey, look, there's this thing out there, this website called CrossFit.com. It was the old yellow CrossFit. So anybody that's been in this for more than 4 years knows the old yellow cheesy website that they had forever, not the nice one that they have now. And we pulled a workout down off of there called Filthy 50. And so we put that together the best we could in the back of this Neshaminy gym. And 25 minutes later, I'm laying on the ground, huffing and puffing, going, what just happened? And then after that, like huff and puff stopped, I jumped up, and it was kind of like, I feel really good. Like, this is awesome. Like, I've been so bored at the gym lately, going from training for football in college. And it was, there's about a year in there where I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was, doing the LA Fitness thing like everybody else, Globo gymming it up. And you can only do so much. So I still was at the Globo gym, and I was actually at the time selling personal training at the LA Fitness in Oxford Valley. So while selling there, me and my buddy would put together workouts either at Neshaminy or at actual LA Fitness until we got asked not to anymore because we were distressing the weights, as they say, with deadlifts. So we did basically the bench press and pull up WOD Lynn over and over, just about twice a week at LA Fitness. And then we do all the other workouts at Neshaminy. So it was fun. But that didn't fill the need. So eventually my wife, at the time, her family was up in Harleysville. So I was going on and following, Keith Bussum, Josh Wagner, Tanya Wagner, and all of those. And so I started traveling up about 2 or 3 times a week from where I was living in Holland, PA at the time, all the way up to Apex. So it was about a 45-minute drive up and a 45-minute drive back. The luckily thing was about once or twice a week, we'd stop at the in-laws for dinner. So it worked out well. And when I was doing that at the time, she has 4 younger brothers. Her brother, Nick, who now just opened up a gym down in Philly, was getting into it. He was still in high school, but he's a phenomenal athlete. So if you don't know Nick Hecht, you can look up his stuff. He just opened up Fortitude and Company right down by the Green Eggs and Ham in Northern Liberties. So him and I, basically, I'm 10 years older than him, and we're going after these workouts, kind of pushing each other and going along. And it wasn't until, my wife was like, "Hey, look, you're traveling an hour and a half back and forth up to the gym. Like, it's getting pretty crazy," because I wanted to start going 4 and 5 times a week. So it got to that point where I'm like, I need to do something, and spoke to, at the time, my father-in-law and told him my plans. And him and I ended up really putting it down on paper that January, and we opened up 2010 April. So we just hit our 10-year anniversary this April.
Where was your first gym?
We literally were 2 doors over from where we were.
Same complex, just a different.
Yep. So we were in a 2,000 square foot space where 800 square feet of that was an office. And we moved into what we're in now, which is a little bit over 3,000 square feet with still the 800 square foot office.
Yeah, no, very, very cool. So since this whole thing happened, can you walk us through the process, since COVID-19 came out, as far as when you closed, what that decision was like, and kind of bring us up to speed to today?
Okay.
Guys are doing, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, we got the word that this all stuff was coming through, and I got it probably about I heard this stuff a few weeks before, and you start hearing about China, and you start hearing about all this different stuff, and it probably wasn't really something that hit home until that week before we got shut down. I started hearing stuff about it, and I started hearing about the closures to travel bans and stuff along those lines with the government. And that's when it got on our radar. And, you talk back and forth as much as you can with people. I personally am somebody that I don't like watching news as much as I can, because I find that, I'm not a giant fan of all the stuff that they put out there, but I know, from a standpoint of running the business, this was something that was going to affect us. So it's the most news I think I've watched in 10 years.
Yeah, same.
So Montgomery County got shut down on Friday. Mm-hmm. And actually, I think I'm Amazing, I think, is James Gilliard. He's one of the Generations guys. He came in and actually worked out with us on Saturday morning. And I knew people were like, I don't know what's going to go on. And we had planned, because of all this, and when everything started going down, to do a full clean of the gym on Saturday. I luckily had a ton of people stay after. John Capero, somebody just jumped on the thing, was there to help us. Our community came out and did what they could. We definitely, took the gym and bleached down every single thing. It was awesome. It was one of those major cleanings, and it was like, we shut down on Saturday. We intended on going and running class on Sunday because we weren't yet shut down, and we really didn't get shut down by the governor until Sunday night. But I decided on Saturday, hey, look, the gym is clean right now. And right now they're shutting, the word came out that they're shutting us down as Sunday night. Let's keep it clean, because the first thing that I thought of and I was seeing coming out from other sources was people are starting to lend out equipment. And I wanted to be able to give out clean equipment to everybody. And I wanted anybody to come in to have a gym that was perfectly spotless. Nobody had touched it since we had cleaned everything off.
You guys gave out or rented out equipment? Is it you gave it out or rented it out?
We gave it out. Anybody that was a member was able to come in and borrow stuff. At first, we weren't sure how many people were going to come. So we were like, hey, look, grab a kettlebell or a pair of dumbbells. And then people started coming in and like, can I get a box? And we have a couple barbells out. I lent out a few of our rowers. But the big thing is, we want people to be able to have that part of their life still that they're used to getting, because that input for most people is a big stress reliever.
Oh yeah.
And I know most people use it to manage the stress. And going into this is probably one of the most stressful times that most people have ever experienced, being shut down and not knowing when you're going to be able to, go out. We feel like a bunch of caged animals.
Oh no, I totally agree. I mean, I kind of sometimes when I go to the grocery store now, I take extra time to like sit in my car a little bit just to enjoy being outside, or I'll just sit outside the car because you stay locked up, basically all day. What does your service look like right now? What did you do as far as what was your plans for continuing to provide a service or no service, or like what were you doing from day you shut down to now? Tell me what that looks like.
So initially, we weren't sure what that first one was because they initially shut us down. Everybody got shut down for 2 weeks. So our plan was, hey, we're going to do this for 2 weeks. Cool. And nobody had any idea of how crazy this was going to get. So we initially put out, some Zoom calls. I know I have a 5:30 a.m. group that they run themselves. They go crazy in the fact that they get after workouts in the morning. We still put up programming on a daily basis. So if anybody wants to, our programming for all of our members is up there. And I try to just add as much of the modifications that I would normally put in and giving people options so that, as if they were talking to me in the gym on that document. So when we put up our workouts, normally we have 3 levels: fitness, performance, and comp. Now it's fitness, performance, and comp. And I put up multiple weights if they're using dumbbells or kettlebells or a barbell. And the other thing that we did was initially we opened up and did a 30-day challenge. And so what I started doing is I started posting that to a private group for the first 5 days. Actually, it was first 4 days. And on the 5th day, I said, you know what, like there's a lot of people at home that probably need this just as much. So I posted it on my personal page and on our FiveStar page and still to our private group. And we had lots of interactions. And the big thing was, hey, look, let's focus in on trying to get a workout in daily. So my videos were between 10 and 15 minutes long. And I went through all the movements that we were doing and different variations and different scales that we would normally put a picture up of the workout. I still actually have my clipboard. I would legitly print out the workouts, and then I'd hang this from my phone tripod and be able to go through and demo that as if I'm in front of a whiteboard or in front of a class.
Right. Wow, that's cool. So are you guys doing the Zoom classes or not doing the Zoom class? I know there's like a 50-50 split between gyms. Some gyms are doing them, some gyms are not doing them, and I totally get the reasons why yes and why no. But are you guys doing those?
Yeah, I have a group that is pretty diehard at the noon time, and they actually just asked me this week. They're like, hey, look, can we get the noon time but like condensed to these parameters? So like legitly, I'm going to do next week every day at noon for a 45-minute class. It'll be warm up to WOD and a half hour. And then what we normally would do for like a strength or a conditioning piece or a mobility piece will be that last 10 to 15 minutes for those that can stay on. And that's kind of, I literally have every single person I've talked to is, how can I help you? How can I make this better work for you now? Because if I sit here and try to just throw out stuff and have people like me guessing at what you need, it's not going to help you.
Right.
And so that's how it's been for majority of our Zoom classes. And that time frame, honestly, the most steady one is our noon class right now. We switch between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. And it's touchy just because everybody's work schedules are changing from working at home. You know, these companies were like, hey, 9 a.m. group calls, and now they're bumping up to 8 a.m. So I'm adapting to whatever people's schedules are. And I think the biggest one and most beneficial one to everybody right now is I have a good group of people that I literally contact on a daily basis. So if they were unlimited, Monday through Friday, I send them a customized version of the workout that's based on, we sit down and we have a half-hour chat or more of, hey, look, what can I do to help you right now? We normally are used to doing workouts, but I know sometimes the workouts might not be your biggest problem. And I know with me, you know, sometimes keeping my routine either in the morning or in the evening will help me get those workouts in. If those two things fall off, my workout gets messed up.
Yeah.
And so I've been working with individuals on their morning routines, individuals with their evening routines. And then the obvious one is just nutrition. Hey, we're all at home. What is going on? And so that's the big question is, hey, look, I can by all means customize the workouts, and we're definitely going to do that anyway.
Oh yeah.
What else can I help you with that's going to help you there? Even if it's just on an accountability level and you say, hey, I need to do this. Can you help me with it? Or just ask me on a daily basis, did I do it or didn't I? Like, what's the score, 1 out of 5 or 1 star out of 5 stars? You know, we use that cliche.
It's a good one. It works in your favor for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I'm of the thought right now, since everyone's home, that right now my athletes should be working on things that we neglected in the gym. And I was wondering what your take on that was, and what you think people should really be honing in on right now, because we talked before the call. Not we all don't have barbells. Listen, I'm at home. I didn't take a barbell to my house. I don't have a, so there's got to be other things for me to work on that'll benefit me for when I get back to the gym. And I'm sure you have some ideas on that. What do you think people should be working on right now?
So I don't know if you're a big fan. You know, I read Ryan Holiday, Stoic philosophy and stuff along those lines. So like the obstacle is the way. I'm reading the stillness is key right now. So I like the way he puts it is that basically when you look at this, we're given an opportunity here. And I think it's, as much as, you know, in the beginning, I was really angry at it. I think it's been a blessing. I really have enjoyed the time at home with my kids and my wife and just slowing down and looking at things from a different perspective. But I think what a big thing for most people is, hey, look, the fitness stuff is always there. There's always a workout to do. As silly as it sounds, you know, you can go outside, find a wooded area and pick some stuff up and toss it and get a great workout out of it. You know, there's many people that travel that are clients that I give them, you know, in, you know, hotel room workouts where they're just doing these different couple workouts and it keeps them going. And most of them actually progress and build off of that. I think we generally want to do the sexy things in CrossFit where we want to do the muscle ups and we want to do, you know, the max snatches and we want to do, you know, the fancy things that you can only do in a CrossFit gym because it's the jungle gym feeling. But I think this is a good time where most people can focus on an area that they need to strengthen up or something that, yeah, they've been neglecting. And I think this is one of those times where that one's a hard thing for people to do. And so what I do is I use the sandwich method. I say, hey, look, you're going to do the thing you really like to do as close to possible. So if it's like just smash yourself with a workout, you know, here you go, do the 1,000 step ups with a weighted vest, go ahead and smash yourself. But your ankle mobility is horrible. And we've been talking about this forever. You're going to have to spend 10 minutes doing ankle mobility, and then you can go for a jog afterwards and just kind of flush the system out. But, you know, take the good two things that you know you want and put the other thing in the middle so that it works. And I design workouts for a few people personally. So I design the whole workout just for them. And I do this with them on a regular basis. It's, hey, look, here's all the good stuff that I know you want. Here's that piece that you said you want, but you don't like doing. So what they call GOAT stuff. And it's really helpful if people take the time and can check the ego. And then, go back to Ryan Holiday, ego is the enemy. Like those things are amazing. If you don't have any books to read, go out and buy Ryan Holiday's 3 books. This isn't, he doesn't pay me for any of this, but The Ego is the Way, or The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy, and Stillness is Key. Those 3 books really do an amazing job of taking everything that's going on right now in our lives, and it compresses it into understandable things.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can take this virus one of 2 ways, and then we'll move off this topic because we don't need to beat this into the ground anymore about the virus. We have some other cool stuff to talk about. But, what we told our people is like we could take this time and either sit here and be miserable, or we can work on stuff we really need to work on. That's mindset stuff. That's physical stuff. That's nutrition stuff. That's mobility stuff, And when we get back to the gym, things are going to be different when we get back to the gym. So if you think you're doing grace when you get back to the gym, that's probably not happening because you're probably going to get hurt because we haven't done any barbell stuff for a very long time. So, but now we're working on the stuff that we should have been working on. And how I feel personally, and I think my coaches would echo this, is that I feel like I'm becoming a better coach. I can't wait to get back to the gym and coach because I feel like this environment has made me more creative, more of a troubleshooter as far as what they have at home, what their weaknesses are, what they should be doing, and all my coaches are the same. And I'm really excited. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm really excited to get back because I feel that I'm going to be a different coach when I step back in the building.
Yeah, it definitely has been nice. And you take your time with your family, but I've had conversations with athletes that I've wanted to get to know better and really dig in, where you can't get that in the first 5 minutes of class. Most of the time it's, hey, how's everything going? And they give you like a little family antidote, something that's going on for them, but you never really dive deep. And taking this time to, sit down with people for a half hour and then checking in again like that another 2 weeks later, it has been really cool. And I definitely find that each time I check in with somebody for the longer period of time, they kind of peel the onion back a little bit, and I get the next layer, and all of a sudden you start, people are like, yeah, you're sending me workouts in the beginning. I said I didn't need anything else, but I'm really stressed. Like my day is like this. I'm at the computer for these chunks of time. And I'm like, okay, well, 25 minutes at the computer, max seated, stand up for 3 to 5 minutes. Even if you're in a conference call, stand up, because you can't be there the whole day. If you're doing that all day, you're just going to tighten up. Your hamstrings are going to go. And there's the same people that have the lower back problems and the tight hamstrings. And I'm like, okay, we can work on this. This is something that we can adapt. And it's just, they need somebody to look at themselves from the outside point of view, and not that we wouldn't know how to do these things ourselves, but then also somebody to keep them accountable to it.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like my job's been lately.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And I agree. I'm as crazy as it's been at home with the boys at home. I'm enjoying spending time with my family that I wouldn't get otherwise. Although my kids are usually with me at the gym when they're not in school, but this is a different environment. So it's definitely been cool. So before we pivot topics, because now we get some fun stuff. We do have quite a number of people that had jumped on late. So I just want to make this announcement because I didn't make it at the beginning because no one was on yet. But I do want to make sure that people know, if you have a question for Shawn, please put it in the chat. And that's how or just acknowledge that you have a question, and I will call on you at the end if you want to ask them live. And if you don't, that's okay too. But I just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to just put it in the chat, and we'll get to it at the end, because I'll try to close this around 1:45. So if anyone has anything, then definitely put it in there. So you know what? Whenever I talk to someone that's around my age in CrossFit, I like to talk about the good old days of CrossFit and how it's changed, because now everyone's focusing on these sectionals, although in this current environment it's not. But the games have changed. And Shawn, how many times have you been to regionals?
So I've competed in 4 regionals, but I've qualified for 5.
Yeah. All right. And what was the first? Walk us back to the first year competing. Tell us about that process, where you ended up, where it was, kind of that whole environment. So I think you know where I'm going with this, and I'll have some input too. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was back in the sectional days of KOP, which I know anybody that was back in CrossFit that time, we still want the sectionals to come back because they were awesome and they were way more, your gym, where regionals were great, but that was all the way in DC and that was kind of tough. So did sectionals at KOP, ended up the top, I think 20 from the 3 sectionals went out to Ohio, and we got to do almost an Aramis-like regional competition where we were outside. There wasn't even like a covering. They literally constructed the rig. This was like old school Rogue days when they first started building rigs, and they were still known for just their rings. I think that was like the #1 seller.
What was what I like to talk, like how weights have changed over the years. So and you probably have more input. So my experience with regionals is I bombed sectionals and I was able to show up at regionals with a team. Just show up, right? That's how it was for the team. Just show up. So we showed up, guys were snatching in Asics running shoes and like nanos weren't really big yet. And back then, I remember if you were a strong guy, if you could snatch at the regional level, if you were snatching 185. And for a female, if you were at that like 135 level. Is that what you remember the numbers being at? Because they're way higher than that now for that level of athlete. I remember that was my first exposure to Ben Smith. Ben Smith stayed in his trailer out in the woods. And he came out of his trailer for the deadlift event. There was a deadlift for the individuals that year, wasn't there?
Yep. That deadlift haunted me.
Yeah. And I want to say he deadlifted 5, right? He came out, pulled 500. He didn't take any other attempts. He came out, pulled a 500, and he walked back to his trailer as soon as he was done. And back then, I mean, a lot of guys pull 500 now. A lot of guys do. And back then, that was like, whoa. That kid, because he was like 18 at the
Yeah.
time, 500 pounds, you know, which was crazy. And people were deadlifting it was on wet grass, but they had mats out. It was totally different. What were some of the workouts that year do you remember some of the workouts for the individuals that year besides the 1 rep max deadlift?
So really quick on the 1 rep max deadlift, I have to give a shout out because my judge at that day was Chris Polenis from CrossFit Kana, who's an old KOP guy. So that's where he started. So he was actually my judge. I had like a picture of it. And I remember that day, like the ground was soft. So I'm literally deadlifting. I have on the bar. I did 475, jumped up, hit 495 and went for 500. But at that point, there was like a good 2-inch divot in the ground from the deadlift bar that you're pulling from. You would literally be on a box.
Yeah, I remember.
And it took me over 2 years to finally break 500 because it was like this big mental gap for me.
Oh, yeah.
But when I first broke it, it was 535. Literally went right past it.
That's unbelievable.
So the other workouts that they had were there was a muscle up WOD. So it was muscle ups, which most people, that was the year after Annie missed the muscle ups at the games at Aramis. So muscle ups were just something that most people were still just learning and working on.
They weren't linked to 10 in a row.
No, I think it was a descending ladder of 5. So it was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And it was a barbell. I want to say it was a clean or a hang clean. And that was 1 WOD. And then there was.
Do you remember that hang clean? Was it 135?
It might have only been something like that. I know at the time my snatch was like a max would maybe be 205 to 215, if that.
Because a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 ladder of muscle ups and hang power cleans could be a gym WOD.
Right.
It was a regional WOD.
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't, if anything, it might have been 165 at the most. But even that, it was a fast WOD. I remember it.
How was did you train yourself? Did you create your own programming? Did you train any more or less? I'm talking specifically that sectional and that regional in Logan, Ohio. What did that training look like for you? And how did you prepare? Did you have training partners? Did you train by yourself? Did you get a coach? Were you doing your own programming? Walk me through that.
Well, it actually worked out pretty crazy. So I did sectionals opened my gym, and then went to regionals about, it was a little under a month afterwards. So I spent almost the whole month of April working on my gym and getting equipment in and finally being able to do all this stuff. So I had the exposure that like I was able to now work out 5 times a day, and it was pretty basic gym at that point. But I now had a handle on a barbell on a regular basis and things along those lines. So I was definitely working out. And along with that, most of the time, I'd work out right when I got done. I was a teacher at the time. I'd work out. I would pick up my son from daycare. He'd come in, he'd sit with the babysitter, and I would coach classes. My wife would pick him up afterwards, and I would either coach another class or I'd stay there to work on the gym. And then that first month, I probably stayed at the gym till 10:30, 11 o'clock, almost 4 or 5 nights a week.
How old were you then? How long ago was that?
I was 28, 29.
Yeah. Could you imagine doing that now? What your recovery would be like?
Yeah. There's not enough Lou wrong in the world.
Definitely not. So what kind of training were you doing? Like where were you getting programming from? Were you doing your class wads? Were you creating it yourself? Were you more strength biased? Like kind of what were you doing?
So at the time I was really getting into the CrossFit football stuff, being a football player. So that was the main part of when I wanted my strength days. So at least Tuesdays and Thursdays on one week, and then I go Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the next week. I was trying to do a lot of the CrossFit football stuff because that played into my wheelhouse and those were my strengths. And then on the other days of the week, I tried to get the other conditioning stuff. And I was really blessed at the time. I had two coaches that worked out with me. One was named Mike Carr. He was pretty good at, his name, we called him Scrappy. He was good at handstand push-ups, which I sucked at, and good at like all these different things that I wasn't really that good at. So I would have him push me on one, and then another guy, Mike Wiggins, I think he still works out at 267. He would help me out and he would push me on, my conditioning. So we went out for a sprint. It was like, trying to chase a horse.
Yeah, I remember those guys.
Yeah. So they're great people. And really, I owe most of my weakness strengthening to those guys. They definitely helped pull me along. And at the time, there wasn't many sources of workouts. Like you would go online and there's like 4 or 5 different places that you might have got workouts from, CrossFit.com being one of them.
Yeah. So how many hours, what do you say the hours per day you were putting in training? Was it 2, 3, 1? How many hours a day were you putting in? Were you doing doubles?
I was at least, in that first year, I was doing just at least an hour, but I was doing so much extra like manual labor at the gym doing things that I would get in another half hour to an hour of just grunt work type things, up and down ladders and stuff along those lines. Later years when I was in regionals, I would put in 2 hours a day.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. So in Logan, do you remember what you placed at that first race?
I want to say I was a little ways back. That mud run they did killed me.
I don't mean this to downplay your athleticism, because making it to regionals is like the World Cup for most people.
Yeah.
Level. But and you don't even have to remember. But
No, I was 23rd. That's what it was. 23rd.
From that year, because I know year 2 was at Prince George Complex that was in DC. That was the second year. What changes did you make to your programming that you're like, you went to regionals, you're like, and I know you're a competitor, so competitors are never happy. You obviously were not happy after Logan, and you're like, okay, refocus. This is what I need to do. What was your plan going into year 2?
So year 2 is just, I could now finally get consistency with my training. So I was literally 6 or 7 days a week.
Yeah.
For at least 2 hours.
I mean to cut you off, but year 2, correct me if I'm wrong, because I want you to talk about this. Was year 2 the first year of the Open?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go on to what changed and through the Open and that whole process.
Yeah. So they threw out this whole like new format where everybody's like, oh my God, we're going to be competing against thousands of people worldwide. And at the time it was like thousands and maybe get up into 80,000. I think that first year was the number of people that competed in the opens. So I remember that year I did really well. I think I placed in our region top 5 in at least 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5 workouts. I remember this first workout they put out, we had 2 weeks to do it because the server they created couldn't even take the load of people entering their scores. So instead of doing that one once or twice for a redo, most people did it 4 or 5 times.
I remember that was the snatch double under workout.
I think so, yeah. So it was crazy. And then, they're throwing out all these different things at you, and it was pretty cool. The one thing I think I personally didn't like about it was it wasn't sectionals. Sectionals was awesome because it was a local comp. You had people there. And I think this is what most people are looking at right now with this whole thing. Like professional athletes and college athletes are going to go back, but they're not going to be in front of people. Like that plays a huge role for some people. I know for me, I get so energized. That's why I love the gym. I get energized by everybody that's there. They literally give me energy and I perform better with them there.
Did you find you had some weaknesses that you had to brush up on year 2? Did you try to focus on anything like gymnastics or anything?
Oh, absolutely. So my overall, my thing has always been, I'm really solid at pacing WODs. If there's a barbell in it, I'm really solid with moving the barbell and staying consistent. One of my big things is the pressing gymnastics, like the handstand push-ups and things along those lines. That was definitely one of the things when that came out. And even to this day, I'm not a great handstand push-up guy because I also have really long ape arms, which is why I'm good at snatching and cleaning because I can get more leverage. So that was definitely something I spent more time on. And like anybody else, I always work on that. It's always something I'm working on to stay good and stay competitive at.
Yeah. So how by the way, just small plug for me. That was the only year I qualified. They took the top 60, and that was the only year I actually had the 60th spot. And I decided, and I'm going to ask you about regionals, that I would get smoked at regionals. So I wasn't even going as an individual. So I went on CrossFit Generation team at the time because that's
okay.
But for me, that was a cool experience. So for me, and I want to ask you about that. That was the first year Reebok was involved. So my experience walking into this place, I go in as a team, and now they get everything because that was like almost like the games at the time. So I went there, and the actual CEO of Reebok was signing people in. Do you remember that? They gave out those blue Reebok shirts.
Yeah.
To this day, it's my favorite shirt, and I can't find it. But what was competing at that regional as an individual like for you? The whole experience, the environment, what was that like?
That was really cool. That brought me back to the feeling of where I would compare the sectionals from the year before to like playing high school football to playing college football. It's a bigger venue. There's a lot more actual sponsors and people around selling stuff like at a normal competition. But there's just this feeling that it was more professionally done. Like they corralled you into slots before you went out to get into your workout. It made a big difference opposed to, I was camped out on the side of the ground 10 feet away from where I worked out at sectionals for workouts, and everybody's just laying on the ground. And it's just the old school way of CrossFit.
Yeah, no, it was definitely cool. Let me ask you this: what's your nutrition like nowadays? What do you do? How you eating? Are you eating paleo? Or are you watching macros? What's going on?
I subscribe to, for me personally, I did the whole paleo thing, like hardcore paleo. Before that, I think my first really big nutrition thing when I got into CrossFit was Zone. Because back then Zone was big. I got to a point where I was eating strict Zone and got down to like 185, which is the lightest I think I've been since I was in like 10th grade. And realized that wasn't working for me because I wasn't gaining any more muscle. I was just slender and down like a distance runner. So I went paleo, And after going paleo, started to like that, but realized that like my longer workouts started suffering more. And that's a weakness of mine. I know too, my engine's not as great after the 15-minute mark.
Right.
So now I prescribe to I eat clean and, train dirty, like that whole methodology. I don't have a lot of breads or complex carbs in the form of refined carbs, but I will have a burger on a Saturday night, and I'll eat usually half of the burger with the bun, and then I'll throw the bun off and then eat a fork and knife style. So
Wow.
I'm not super strict.
You got discipline.
But I know that, there's a certain way of getting in all the good stuff. Like my breakfast is honestly almost identical every single day. And most of the time my lunches, same thing. And dinners vary a little bit, but most of the time it's, a good protein. And as of right now, I've been cutting the carbs out of the evening just because a little more sedentary being at home as much. So my carbs aren't in the evening. I push them towards the front, and I eat a little bit more fats at the evening, and I take the fats out at the beginning of the day. So I have more playing with the macro side of things, but I don't really dial it in, and I don't write every single thing down just because for me that caused me more stress.
Yeah, but you're eating pretty clean. I mean, that sounds. I do some nutrition coaching. You're pretty dialed in, even on your cheat days. And I'd be curious to know if that has to do with your spouse, because I know that your wife was she? Because I went to a show, and ironically, it was to watch one of my athletes, and I saw you and your wife there.
Yeah.
And the show was at, but it was at a high school, but it was a professional show, or you could get your pro card there.
Yeah.
What is your wife actually? Is she a physique bikini? What was she into?
She was a bikini competitor, and she got into that just out of kind of a new thing to do after our son Maddox was born. So he's 6 now. And right after he was born, about 9 months later, she was like, I need to get back into, my body type. And she did the CrossFit thing, but wasn't ever really competitive with it. She did a couple comps, but she didn't really like it. And she wasn't, into it like the way I was. So when she got into that, she found that, that was her thing. And I, took the time to coach her through that. And she did really, really well. She won a bunch of like the lower level, like getting into and trying to go for the pro card level shows. And it was a fun world. It was a neat experience. She dialed in her nutrition, and I worked on her nutrition to the point where like we're weighing out every gram and every ounce of water so that she can show up on stage and every muscle can be shown. But that's a whole nother world. And I think nobody needs that level. It's just like going into regionals or the games. Like that's when you dial in those numbers specifically. On a regular basis, unless you have no control, you can play and stay within the same just by using that whole hand method. We've all gotten that at this point in time.
Oh yeah.
So
Do you guys get to work out together often? Is she doing CrossFit, or is she not really do CrossFit? And you guys getting to do couples workouts? I get 0 workouts with my wife in a week, maybe 1.
Well, so most of the time she's a workoutaholic right now because she works as a hair designer, hairstylist at David Witchell in Peddler's Village. So she's used to being on her feet all day. So this whole like getting into this is made her crazy to the point where she needs to actually work out more. So she usually works out in the morning while I make breakfast for the boys. And then we get into like the morning teaching mode and they do their schooling stuff. And some days we'll work out together in the afternoon, or she'll get another workout in, or we'll go for a run. It's usually about 1 or 2 days a week we get a workout in together.
That's cool. I think that's important for you to work out with your family. I really think it is, and I think it's something good to do that your kids see too.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like she's, gotten to the point where sometimes my son will go out and jog with her, or they'll come down and, the little one will be doing burpees and, swinging a little 3 to 5 pound weight.
Yeah, totally. So I have one more question, and this is going to be my question. I haven't spoken to any CrossFit athlete in my age range that's been yet. You're my first. Quinlan will be my second. And I want to start asking a question. So I'll go first with the answer so you know what I'm looking for. All right. And then why we're doing this, if anyone wants to drop a question in there, go right ahead. If you just had joy in listening today, that's totally cool. But this will be our last part for today. And then I'll let Shawn get on about his busy day. So CrossFit has changed, and I don't really pay attention a lot of and the games. I do, but I'm not invested in the athletes. When I was younger and doing it, I was invested in the athletes. So I have a favorite athlete, and I have a couple favorite athletes. So my all-time favorite CrossFitter to this day was Miko Salo. That was my favorite. He has a documentary. If anyone has time, which I know we all do, please go watch his documentary on YouTube. It was called Sisu, Sisu.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about a humble guy that went after it and trained and had focus. He was like if I had a CrossFit idol, that was my CrossFit idol. I got a couple more that I'd like to talk about, but that's it for today. I like Miko. You have the same guy or you have someone different?
Yeah, I definitely thought about buying a sauna for my house after watching that same thing. He's definitely was one of my favorites. I had the gray, everybody else is laying on the ground on their back and he's standing over them shirt that Rogue put out back in the day. Like, he definitely was one of my favorites. But I have to go with, I've always been an underdog kind of fan. And he's not an athlete at all like me, but I had the pleasure of being coached by him at my level 1, and got a chance to meet Chris Spieler. So I know everybody that, pulled for him, like, they would love to see him, won the games. And everything he has done from that point all the way up through, and he was a PA guy. He was a local wrestler too. So that's probably why I put him more at the top of my list than Miko. I wish Miko would have done it. I thought he would have been the Rich Froning before Froning was, but just injuries didn't allow him to.
Again, it's like, but this is my favorite guy. Like, I couldn't agree with you more about Chris Spieler. He was one of my favorites too. And talk about like just a hard grunt work kind of guy that, like, and a lot of wrestlers are like that. A lot of wrestlers are like that. They're some of the hardest workers I've ever dealt with is athletes and everything. Like, and he was the epitome of just like, no one's gonna tell me I can't do it. I'm gonna weigh a $135 and clean 135 pounds or 155. It was at that first games 30 times and still hold my own. He was in that two great movies people have to watch while they're home, so you can get a perspective on CrossFit. Every second counts.
Oh yeah,
find that somewhere, and you got to watch the Sisu documentary. Go watch that and then come back when I have Quinlan on and we could have a conversation about it. We could talk about those days because that's when we got into it, and that was the coolest stuff. You get to see Spieler, you'll see Miko. It's awesome.
Yeah, actually, just a quick story. One of the cool things that I remember from my competition was when that first regionals, that first year out in Logan, we're competing, and there was this guy who basically was in like 4th place going into the final workout. And there's this crazy young guy named Dan who is all muscled out. And everybody knows who Danny Brofest is at this point. But literally we're doing box jumps, and Dan's calf, he's in like 1st place or 2nd place at this point. His calf cramps up. Oh, he's in 2nd because I think Ben Smith was in 1st. Calf cramps up, and he actually ended up dropping off and allowed Graham Holmberg the spot to get in. And that was the same year Graham Holmberg went on, and we had Rich Froning fall from the rope, and he actually won. Yeah. So it was pretty cool to see like that evolution, and like you see those athletes and you follow those athletes because you've competed against them.
Oh yeah. I got to find pictures from then because Dan Bailey showed up. He had long hair. He had something holding it back, and he wore a cutoff t-shirt. Like, that's what CrossFit was back then. He was jacked out of his mind.
Yeah, it was either a cutoff or it was a track shirt. I know he had his high school or college track outfits on.
And he was one of the first guys. I'm watching him do box jumps, and bounding is kind of like, for a lot of CrossFitters, like even like just normal everyday CrossFitters, like bounding box jumps are still like a skill they're trying to get. He was the originals. He was bounding them. And I was like, whoa, what the heck is that?
Yeah, that final workout was 30-inch box jumps too, and he was bounding them. And I remember, you know, one of the experiences I had with him, and I'm running that course that they had through the woods, and you get to the top after you do the bag carry and you're coming downhill, and out of nowhere, this guy comes out, bat out of hell down the hill and finishes probably like 20 seconds ahead of me, but just flew. And it was Dan Bailey. And it was a cool experience.
Athletes, and to think about that you were right next to those guys. But Shawn, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on today. And honestly, I consider us friends. So I don't want this to be the last time we do this, because amongst us coaches, especially in this community, the PA community, sure, we need to do more of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have such value to provide people, and and again, we talked about, in closing, the crisis being this like reset button. Is like, what can we do better as coaches, as owners of gyms? This is something we could do better. We can.
Sure.
Because we have people in the middle of the day right now just hanging out listening to us.
Yeah, I thank everybody for being on today. I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and anybody that watching this afterwards, thanks for taking the time to listen to two guys that, we have a lot to offer. It's just we're not the big popular CrossFit people, but from a standpoint of in the own gyms and everything, we're there because we love what we do and we love helping people. And I really appreciate you bringing me on here today, Matt.
No worries, man. And we'll stay in touch, brother. Seriously. All right, man. Hey, thanks again. Say hi to your family. Take care. And then when this all gets done, we'll visit each other's gyms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
See you, brother.
All right. See you.